Content warning. This video discusses themes of sexual assault and suicide. Please call Lifeline or 1-800-RESPECT if you or someone you know needs support. I'm getting a master's degree. Hello everyone, welcome to On the Grapevine. I'm Grape. Thank you for being here. Welcome. This is so fun. This is so exciting. As I just said, I'm Grape. Grape with E, Grape with all of you. Any variation is totally fine. So today, because I have too much free time, I actually don't, but I like to pretend I have a lot of free time. We are going to be talking about the pilot of Supernatural. Supernatural, Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. Oh wait, I have another point. Supernatural, Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. How exciting! How very cool! This is very, very exciting behavior. Oh my gosh, really cool, because it's also been 20 years since Supernatural premiered. Get that in your little noggin. Also, because I'm in my 20s and live with housemates, who I love and respect, you'll probably hear background chatter of them playing a board game that I've been told is called something. Axis and Allies, Europa, I don't know. It's a big war board game and it gets very competitive and very chatty, but I don't want to have to move all of this to a studio to go film. And so it's just more authentic, you know? It's just the extra like energy, I guess. Anyways, so yes, Supernatural, Season 1, Episode 1, Pilot. Now before we get into this, a little bit about me. I, as you can tell, love Supernatural. I have a shirt. Do you want to know how else I love Supernatural? How much else? Give me 1 second. This. That's how much I love Supernatural. And this. I know. In these photos, Jared looks like he hasn't really aged, which is kind of cool. They're very sweet as well. Gentleman's very shy. We're on a first name basis now, guys. We're really, really good friends. Anyway, this is one of my favorite shows. Probably actually my favorite show when I think about how many times I've rewatched it, how much I know about it. I listen to podcasts. I paid $800 to get photos with Jensen and Jared. I also watched Jensen's god-awful show, Countdown, purely because he was in it. It's my favorite show. It's so good. Probably up there with Dario. Big fan of Dario. Maybe I'll do a Dario recap. That could be so much fun. Stick around and find out. Anyways, so other things that I love. I love things that are not at all controversial, not at all concerning about the person who created them. You know, I just really, really like art and stories that just have no controversies around them whatsoever. I'm kidding, obviously kidding. I love the Harry Potter books. I know, anything you're about to type, anything that you're arguing, I know. Don't worry, I've already said it. I've already had that argument with myself. I love the Hunger Games books. I recently, this year, actually did read Sunrise on the Reaping. Fantastic. This is my apology to Suzanne Collins for all the Snowthirst edits I really liked because, yikes, yeah, those, yep. I love Babel by R. Cohen, Babel. Pronunciation seems to vary depending on who you talk to, but I say Babel. I also love Succession. I love Severance. Severance videos are coming as well. Sorry, film. I also love just so many things. I love Baldur's Gate 3. I love Claire Obscure Expedition 33. I love The Last of Us Part 1 and 2. If you're a Part 2 hater, this is not a safe space for you, okay? Absolutely not. Go somewhere else, okay? I love Part 2 and Abby was right. Take that. What are you gonna do, huh? There are so many things I love as well. I love that show Colin from Accounts. It's an Australian show, fantastic. I love Boy Swallows Universe, also Australian bookend show, fantastic. The Book Thief, also 20 years since The Book Thief, guys. What an amazing book, wonderful. I also love so many other things. I love Supernatural, obviously. I love Doctor Who, and I love SuperWhoLock. the sacred summoning words. We're going to come back to the significance of that in just a little bit. But if you follow me on Twitch, which you should, a lot of fun over there, I'm streaming lots of video games, and it's just a really, really nice vibe. Then you also know that I like to start my videos with what I'm reading at the moment. And I'm so happy to be able to keep doing that here. So today's book is Big Love, Big Love by Brooke Lawton. I saw her speak a few months ago at my local library, and she was wonderful. She was great. We had a very brief chat. She was lovely. She seemed so switched on. She seemed very like a genuine and earnest person. I didn't know that she had a memoir, and so her autobiography, I'll get into that in a different video, but her autobiography I'm reading now, it's really good. I really like it. It's very insightful, as all autobiographies are supposed to be, which is lovely. So I recommend it. I really, really recommend it. For those of you maybe watching this who don't know who Brooke Lawton is, she has like 400 jobs, and she's good at all of them. She's probably most famous in Australia, I would say, for being in the Bachelor franchise. She was on the Bachelor, I don't know, one season, but when it was the Honey Badger, Nick Cummins, that was the season where he picked no one. Brooke left of her own volition, partially because she said in an interview that she knew that the Honey Badger wasn't going to pick anyone. So she thought, well, I sod this, why stick around? Then she was our bachelorette, and from what I understand, she was the first queer or bisexual bachelorette ever in the franchise, which is kind of cool. And she was also, someone at the door. Hang on. One minute. Okay, we're back. Anyway, she was our first, and I think the world's first bisexual bachelorette. She was also perhaps the world's first Indigenous bachelorette, because she's Aboriginal. It's a good book. I really like it so far. She seems kind of nice. And, you know, Brooke, if you ever watch this, I'd love to maybe interview you and talk to you more about your life, because you just seem like a really, really cool person. Anyway, so that is the book of the episode. Other things about me that I like that are very non-media related. I like knitting. I love knitting. Very relaxing, very fun. I like dancing. I like singing. I like going for hot girl walks, getting outside, getting some, you know, sunshine. It turns out that people are right when they say touching the grass and getting sunshine is good for you, because it is really nice for you. It's pretty good. I really recommend it if, you know, you just need a little pick-me-up throughout the day. Now we know a bit more about me, which is so cool. Join the group, join me on Twitch, join me here. This is more of what you can expect, which you might like and you might not, but I think you should like, because again, we're so fun here. Let's go into what today's video is going to be about. Obviously, it'll be about the pilot of Supernatural. I was going to do the whole season in one video, and then I realized that that's insane, because I like to yap, as you will find out as this video progresses. And I also didn't want to overwhelm my very kind editor and my best friend. So thank you, Philbus. The other reason I didn't think that would be a super good idea is there's a lot of context that I want to go into about the show, and a lot of context into the second wind it got in the 2010s, if you know, you know. I also thought it'd be a really good idea to break down the pilot specifically, because again, the pilot premiered 13th of September 2005. If I get my shit together, this will go up on YouTube on 13th of September 2005, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. And you know, here we are, and that's totally okay. I thought it'd be a really good idea to break down just the pilot so we can kind of see what the show at its core is about. Anyway, part of why I also want to talk about Supernatural is it's a show that seems to come up often enough in social circles. So if you're wanting to watch this show for a little while and you think to yourself, I would watch this show, but I want to remain a sane person, and I want to remain healthy, and I want to remain having a good balance in my life. Or you could be the opposite. You could think, but I'm busy doom scrolling and I have hot girl walks to go on and I'm simply too busy. Then don't worry, I've got you covered. I have all this knowledge up here that I'm putting onto here to help you. This is my public service work. This is the true definition of a public servant. You know how good a public servant I'm going to be in this series? I'm going to recap the entire freaking series. Yes, even season 9.
Dear God.
Oh, yep, I know. Season 9, gonna be up here. Bugs from season 1, gonna be up here. The great thing about these videos is if you are someone who hasn't seen the show but you want to be able to talk about it with your friends or within those nerd spaces, I've got you covered. Thanks to my little fun fact section over here. You'll have enough knowledge to make it sound like you've seen the show because you'll have these great little tidbits here. You don't have to watch the whole thing because it's about 327 episodes. What? Streaming could never. And we'll get into that. Don't worry. The other demographic this is for is if you just really love the show and you want to watch videos about people who love the show, because that's what this whole thing is about. That's how these nerd spaces thrive. We talk about what we love, how sometimes it's the best show in the planet, and other times it is the worst thing I have ever put my eyeballs through. As we know, today's TV landscape is completely different to what it was in 2005. I'm in my 20s, so I have memories of shows like this on air. I didn't watch Supernatural when I was little because I was a child and my parents don't really like horror shows. I do remember the ads for it though, and I remember it had the 9:30 p.m. slot on Channel 10 because the 8:30 p.m. slot was Smallville. So I remember that being like the double billing for Thursday night or Wednesdays, whatever it was. I don't remember. So I remember the show being around, but it wasn't until high school that I got into it in the 2010s. Yeah. Because you see, if I was in high school during the 2010s, then that meant that I was on the internet during the 2010s, which meant that I was on Tumblr during the 2010s, which also meant that I was involved in the phenomenon, the epic highs, the pitiful lows of SuperWhoLock. Like I said before, for those of you who are, healthy, adjusted, don't need medication, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about, and good for you. You know, your life is better, maybe worse. I don't know, it's up to you. It's up to your own personal perspective. Your life is different for not knowing what SuperWhoLock is, I'll put it that way. So, for the purposes of this video, let me bring you down to the level for those of us who are unhealthy, unadjusted, and do need medication. Although I will say, now that I'm on my meds, brand new woman. If I wasn't on my meds, I probably wouldn't be able to make this video, for worse or for worser. You can decide with that as you will. Take your notes, bestie. SuperWhoLock was the term given to the fandom made up of fans of Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock. I don't really have the words to fully articulate what this time on the internet was.
Dickensian twaddle.
I had a great time, for the most part. My dashboard, that's like Tumblr For You page, was a great place to be, but it was still the internet, so sometimes things went a little bit. It was so special because we were finding places online where we could talk about art and stories that we loved with other people who loved them. Especially because a lot of that time school wasn't socially always a great place to be, so it was like a nice little haven. You know, it was like a nice little corner where everything felt right with the world for a little bit. So let's place SuperWhoLock in time, because in order to understand how this show managed to go for as long as it did, you have to understand that phenomenon. And to understand that phenomenon, we have to zoom out and look at the nerd space in general at that time. Let's go back to 2011. I know, lots of dates being thrown around, but I promise you it's all going to make sense once everything falls into place. Just trust me. Just trust the journey. I know everything about this. Okay, so 2011. This was a pretty big year because the Harry Potter movies had just wrapped up their 10-year cinematic run, which is crazy behavior, really, when you think about it. We have the Marvel movies that have been going since forever, but the MCU as we know it has been going since 2008. We've obviously had the Star Wars movies going from the 70s up until now-ish. But the differences with those movies is the cast changes a lot, okay? Iron Man isn't in every single Marvel movie, or Qui-Gon Jinn is only in the 1, 2. It's been a while since I've seen those movies. He's been in 1 as far as I'm aware. Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't in every single Star Wars movie, but the Harry Potter movies, it was the same primary cast the entire way through, which meant that for 10 years you had this really dedicated fan base to this franchise. Suddenly, those movies end, and you have all of these like nerds looking for the next piece of art and media to pour their heart into, to give their money to.
Money!
Fortunately, because of the success of the Harry Potter movies and the Lord of the Rings movies, and to an extent, the Star Wars prequel trilogy, I would say. I'm not as much in the Star Wars world, and given everything I see about people talk about it online, it's probably better for me, personally. Those movies performed very well at the box office. They also performed, maybe not quite the Star Wars prequel trilogy, but especially the Lord of the Rings movies, they were adored by critics, right? The Harry Potter movies, they got pretty good reviews. They got some Academy Award nomination for the most part, massive success. Lord of the Rings movies didn't make as much money, but holy shit did it clean up at the Academy Awards. All this to say, nerd spaces were starting to be taken a little bit more seriously. So, after the success of those movies, which was spurred on by nerds, right? Us nerds, we don't have a ton of friends because we get bullied, because we have a general zest for life and are excited about things, which, like, if that's not you, then tragic. But what that means is we take the few friends we do have to go to the movies and see these stories, or we watch them at home with our friends. Then we go to these online like platforms and forums, which is also partially how the Harry Potter movies were a big game changer in nerd spaces, because it was one of the first pieces of media and stories that was releasing in time with the internet taking off. So you had these like bulletin boards, forums, blog spaces dedicated to talking about fandom, right? So you have all of that success, which then generates so much free press for these movies that more people go and see them, right? So after the success of those movies and the space starting to change, what does Hollywood do?
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Hollywood greenlights adaptations for the Twilight books, the Hunger Games books, the Percy Jackson books, the Mortal Instruments books, John Green books, the Divergent books. Yeah. But anyway, so because those movies take off, those books then start getting greenlit, which makes sense, right? That's how Hollywood works. It needs some kind of tester, like a guinea pig, if you will, and then more books start getting greenlit. There's a specific phenomenon with youths with young adult dystopian books. That was another key component of my teenagehood specifically, was the sheer amount of young adult dystopia. Again, Hunger Games took off, performed very, very well, so everything starts getting greenlit. Like the Maze Runner books as well, they get a green light as well. But I think it's fair to say that without the success of Twilight and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, we probably wouldn't have got all those other adaptations. Which, given how most of them went, maybe that's, I don't know. So then you have that nerd space taking off, right? But then what also happens in 2005? 2005 is a pretty big year for nerd spaces, it turns out. Batman Begins releases in cinemas. Christopher Nolan's entry into his Dark Knight trilogy. And like, it's a fine movie, I guess. Like, it's no Batman and Robin, but like, you know, sure, I guess it did well. It's got Cillian Murphy though, who I do love. So the Batman Begins comes out and does pretty well, I guess, which then means that other nerd spaces, like the superhero space, they start going, okay, maybe we can tell these stories with a lot of like genuine filmmaking and earnest energy and with some depth and Substance, great movie by the way. So then in that 2005, development on Iron Man starts to happen, okay? And that movie also goes pretty well, I guess. It's fine, sure, I'm kidding, it's pretty good. Now there's another really important superhero movie that came out around that time. I don't know. It's got Heath Ledger. He has some weird makeup, I guess. Oh yeah, right, Dark Knight. That comes out in 2007. I don't know, I'll get fact checked by my editor. So that comes out, and holy shit, is that a game changer. For like everywhere, it's a game changer. But now, because that movie is so good and it's part of a world that has typically been considered nerdy, now it's kind of cool to be a nerd, because one of the best movies of the year is about a superhero. It made like $1 billion. It won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, which like, slay Heath Ledger. I personally think that the new one with Robert Pattinson is better. But that's my opinion, you know, and I'm right. I'm actually correct. What essentially happens around this time is we start to swap magic capes for superhero capes, is what we do. But the nerd space is still thriving, okay? I know this is a bit of a tangent and rambling, but it will make sense in relation to Supernatural Second Wind and overall success of the show. So to quickly recap, this show premieres 2005, alongside lots of other shows like Grey's Anatomy that also premiered in 2005, and I think is the only one now still going, which is crazy behavior, first off. But I think part of the show's success is that nerd spaces were starting to be listened to more in a way that, from what I see or understand, hadn't really happened before. There'd always been like outlier nerdy shows, but usually it was just like one or two. Whereas now, lots of nerd content and stories were really, really taking off, and in some cases, leading these like literary or film spaces, which this absolutely benefited from, and we'll continue to look into how that was the case. So, in one California hellscape, Hollywood, we have this nerddom space changing. But in another California hellscape, Silicon Valley, real life nerds are making a ton of money off nerdy pursuits. Mark Zuckerberg, nerd. Mark Randolph, nerd. Steve Jobs, also huge nerd. What do you think I'm filming this on? We're seeing that the nerds who were getting bullied in the 90s and the 2000s are now starting to make a ton of money off their nerdy pursuits. They're at the foreground of culture, progress, technology, innovation, and are setting out to improve the world or change the world, depending on your perspective. And everything's totally fine. And what were once fun apps I could post about past are now an algorithmic nightmare, poisoning the minds of users and deteriorating our fundamental understanding of reality, kindness, truth, and altering our perception of the world around us, and are turning us into these hyper-individualized people who are more obsessed with our own fears, our own doubts, our own insecurities, driving us further into these algorithms and making us afraid of the world around us, which then in turn fuels that algorithm and continues to feed us those fears and insecurities, and makes it really, really difficult to reach out to people and talk about your fears online, because of course, why would you do that? That's so cringe, that's so stupid. And so we fall further into these traps of these apps, and it makes it really, really difficult to actually reach out and form community with people. By the way, make sure to like and subscribe and follow me on socials and find me on Twitch. Anyway, because the visibility of nerdiness is changing, that means that the people contributing to these spaces is also changing. YouTube channels, the founder, also a nerd, started platform people like PewDiePie, Zoella, Markiplier, Tanya Burr. People with nerdy interests are starting to make a ton of money off these nerdy pursuits. You have game streaming, come find me on Twitch, film reviews, skits, makeup tutorials, those are nerdy. Makeup tutorials are nerdy. I'm going to come back to the feminization of nerd hobbies, and we'll get into that a bit later. But you have this space where now being a nerd is really, really profitable. And that's just the stuff you can make money off. I haven't even touched on the non-for-profit stuff, not in the charity sense, but just people doing things because they like it. Things like fan art, cosplay, fan fiction. That is the big one. Fan fiction is how the show kept going, because oh my god, the fan fiction about this show, crazy. menace behavior, absolutely unhinged, which is why we also have to talk about my favorite social media app, Tumblr. All that shit I talked earlier about the perils of social media in the modern age, Tumblr is excused. Coding held together by gum and an old guy with a dream. Curated page? What curated page? You want shit for you? You want to bookmark pages? You want to save posts? You want an algorithm? What algorithm? You want recommended material? Get out of here!
You need to leave!
You want shit for you? You want the app to think for you? What do you think this is? You bitches on TikTok, who I love and respect, your edits are changing irrevocably, would not last one day in the 2010s of Tumblr, purely because it was absolute chaos. You also had some of the most amazing, heartbreaking art, both visually, cosplay, fan fiction, made by literal children who had nothing else better to do with their time. The amount of stories or posts that have the tag, "Hey guys, sorry this is late. I had homework to do because I'm literally 12. I also understand these characters better than you ever could, and better than the author ever could. And also English is my second language, and also here you go. Also it's free. Also I'll maybe update it a bit later. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Bye." Also, I don't want to bean soup this too much because I'm going to be generous and assume that watching this video you have some capacity to think critically, but as fun as these spaces were, they also were deeply racist and deeply sexist. Remember earlier when I was talking about how makeup is a nerdy pursuit? Yeah, some people, men,
A man.
probably wouldn't agree with that. If you were a nerd and you could name every holiday Barbie, and you could name exactly how many of those holiday Barbies were made, how many were sold, what the market value was, how that market value changed over time, then that's not fucking nerdy, you stupid fuck. That's girlish. Girls can't be nerds. However, if this was your nerdy pursuit, or something like Batman or The Lord of the Rings, then that's nerdy. You're not like other girls. Don't even get me started on if you were a non-white nerd. There are better videos that can go into that. I'm simply not that. I can talk a lot about like the gender components of that, but gender and race components, there are people smarter than me for that. So I really recommend you go watch those videos. This is a kind of interesting one because as we'll get into the show, it will become very clear who the target audience was supposed to be and who it ended up becoming. But we'll get into that a bit more later. Now, so with the explosion of fandom, creativity, and the real life nerd components changing, it was a pretty good time to be a nerd and to be online, thinking of all the caveats I just said earlier. And again, so much of that is fueled by these online spaces and fan fiction, because suddenly you might have Tony Stark meeting Bruce Wayne, and they have to team up to solve this really scary problem or something. I don't know. You might have Merlin and Arthur meeting the Doctor because the Doctor time travels and he goes to the Lancelot times. Also, England literally has 12 actors, so that helps with the crossover. Then you have maybe, I don't know, perhaps Sherlock gets a really strange case and he has to consult on it because the way that the person died was not natural.
I mean, what if there's something not natural?
You kind of see where I'm going with this. So this is also why SuperWhoLock was massive, because you have these narrative crossovers in that they work on strange cases in which people die in odd circumstances, which is also Sherlock Holmes's deal, but it's slightly different spaces. They're dealing with actual monsters and ghosts and demons and all sorts of things. Sherlock deals with cases where it looks like that happened, but it was actually something else the whole time. And the Doctor, because he can travel throughout time and space, I know the Doctor has also been a woman. The Doctor technically isn't non-binary. The point of the Doctor is that everything can change, which is kind of cool. But in this time, the Doctor was a guy. He can travel throughout time and space. So there's some context or some narrative suggestion that he could cross paths with the Winchesters. So you have a lot of these narrative tie-ins together for how this blew up. We also probably can't ignore the fact that, how do I say this? The casts were fucking hot, okay? They're just really good looking. Look at these guys. Are you really gonna tell me that this doesn't play a factor into the popularity of these shows with certain online spaces? Oh, of course they did. So you have these very attractive brothers on screen. Doctor Who at the time had one of the youngest and most attractive casts consistently, I think, across the show. Or at least it was getting a lot of attention because of how young everybody was. Matt Smith was about 26 at the time. He got the Doctor. He's still the youngest to have played the Doctor. He had Karen Gillan, who played Amy Pond. He had Arthur Darvill, who played Rory. And he had the beautiful and wonderful and talented Alex Kingston. Anyway, so you have these very attractive casts all on air at the same time. Right, you have the Winchester brothers. You have the Doctor Who cast. Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock Holmes. Martin Freeman, he's Martin Short. He's a little bit of a Martin Short or Martin Freeman. I think it's Martin Freeman. Yeah, Martin Freeman as Watson. He's kind of cute, you know. He rocks the grey hairs as the later seasons goes on. So you know, like, good on him. You have these very attractive nerd spaces, and the nerds were well fed. I was nourished during this time. Great time to be a nerd. Don't understand. You don't understand. It's now hot to be a nerd. And we probably can't ignore, or at least discount, that some of that was likely spurred on by these Silicon Valley types, right? Because if they're at the foreground of culture, innovation, they're probably going to, in some ways, influence how nerds are presented. I don't think it's as simple as Mark Zuckerberg going, yeah, hey, can you make Sherlock Holmes have a dump truck? Thank you so much. It's not quite that. There's just more context and influence, and that's how these things always happen, okay? Right, so we have hot nerds, we have very profitable nerd space, and we have good quality material coming out of these spaces, which is why the show, I think, got its massive second wind in the 2010s. Because by this point, it'd been on air since 2005, right? And it was never really like bad per se with ratings or with critics. It seemed to perform pretty well for what it was, sometimes a little above average, and it seemed to be held in pretty high regard. But I think it really retook off due to the success of SuperWhoLock and these other nerd pursuits. So, part one, done. SuperWhoLock helps keep Supernatural going, and it keeps going up until 2020, which is so freaking long. Okay. Also, something I just remembered, part of why I think SuperWhoLock in particular was so popular is I was only half kidding when I said that England only had Britain as the whole, that Britain only has 12 actors. I'm not entirely kidding. If you watch any episode of Doctor Who, Sherlock, Merlin, or anything else that's come out from the BBC, I can guarantee you it's probably going to have David Tennant, it's probably going to have Colin Morgan, it might have Martin Freeman, maybe, might have Olivia Colman, because she's been in Broadchurch and Doctor Who. There's a good chance it will also have the actor who plays Giles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because he's also in Merlin. And probably the biggest point of connection between the three shows, the actor who plays Crowley in Supernatural, Mark Sheppard, was also in some episodes of Doctor Who, season 6, I believe, and he was in discussions with Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss to play a character in Sherlock. And it looked like it was going to take off, but it just got a bit too tricky with the way that they wanted the story to go. Although given how season 4 went of Sherlock, it probably would have been the better choice to bring him in, because as we'll get into with these videos, he's one of the best parts of Supernatural, hands down. He was also in Australia recently and I really, really wanted to go, but it was that or reading Critical Role. And Critical Role was their first time here as a whole group, and that just seemed more pressing for me as a nerd at that time. But anyway, so that's also partially why this took off, is the actors in the show had been in each other's shows, and people wanted to play with that crossover, I guess. So now we can wrap up part one. Part one, SuperWhoLock, done. And I'm never going to speak about it ever again.
Liar!
Part two. Now, with all that out of the way, let's go back to 2005 when the pilot of Supernatural actually premiered. Like we just said, the nerd space was starting to change. It was looking pretty good. Overall, in the early 2000s, like as a general kind of placeholder, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Gladiator had just performed really, really well at the Academy Awards. We also had the Star Wars prequels, and that was just in the movie space, right? But now, let's go move to TV. What's happening in television land? Oh, sorry, trigger warning, Joss Whedon.
Brother,
We had Firefly, we had Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we also had Freaks and Geeks, the X-Files. That was a pretty big piece of nerd media. And perhaps most importantly, for the purposes of this show, we had Smallville. Smallville is hugely important to the success of Supernatural for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've learned very recently that Jensen Ackles was actually runner-up to get the role of Clark Kent in Smallville, which is kind of cool. Smallville was also one of the first long-running live-action superhero shows on television. There'd been a couple of superhero shows before that, obviously the best of all, the Batman animated TV series. There was also the Adam West show. There were lots of like animated shows, but in terms of live action, it was still pretty new. And it's probably safe to say that without the success of Smallville, we wouldn't have shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., probably wouldn't have Arrow, probably wouldn't have The Flash, probably wouldn't have Supergirl, probably wouldn't have Okay, maybe we need a time travel portal. Anyway, without Smallville, we also then wouldn't have gotten Jensen Ackles in season 4, who has spoken about how it was Smallville that got him the role of Dean Winchester. So in that component, it's very important, and we are going to come back to Smallville in a little bit. Another show on the WB, because that's what Smallville also started on, was another nerdy, cute little cozy show called Gilmore Girls, which starred none other than Jared Padalecki. So you have them both on these nerdy-ish shows, but on the same network. Them being on that one network is pretty important for how they got these parts, because they never actually properly auditioned for the roles of Sam and Dean, at least in the way that we think how auditions go. Jared has explained that he had a contract with the WB that meant he couldn't audition for shows on other networks, but the WB had to find him work on its network. So he might have a guest spot in ER, or he might have a guest spot in something else, right? But they were responsible for finding him work. I don't think Jensen had something quite as strict, but it's possible that that's what was happening, because we have to remember as well, particularly in the early 2000s, there was a much clearer distinction between a TV actor and a movie actor, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. So because they were kind of offered the roles or read for the roles with very little competition, that seems odd to me and not like standard practice at that time. Bethany Joy Lenz, who played Haley Jane Scott on One Tree Hill, which also has a fun connection to Supernatural, which we'll get into as the videos go on. She wrote in her memoir about how she was invited to read for Haley on the show because the network executives really, really wanted her. In her case, she, I think, had more credits than Jensen and Jared. And I don't know if she was more well-known, but she had a much longer resume. She'd been acting since she was a kid. So in her case, I understand that maybe that comes with a bit of a reputation and the ability to have that kind of exclusivity. I don't know if they were quite in the same ballpark. But also, I think now we assume that that's how a lot of TV roles go about, particularly on something like Severance, right? Or maybe Succession, or these bigger, high-budget shows. Succession isn't really a streaming show, it's a HBO show, but now that the streaming model is what it is, I think instances like this are probably more common than they were at that time. Another really big difference between the TV landscape in 2005 and the TV landscape now is the length of a season. So quick story. My partner and I recently watched The Pit on HBO Max. It's a fantastic show. I highly recommend it. HBO, if you ever want a sponsor, you can just hit me up. And what we were really surprised by is that the season is 15 episodes. I know. A show premiering in 2005 on a weekly basis has 15 episodes. Crazy. Absolutely unheard of. And they're still about an hour each. So you're getting about 15 hours of material, which no other show that I can think of is doing, at least at that prestige streaming basis. Let's quickly compare. Last for season 2, 7 episodes. The White Lotus season 3, 8 episodes. The Bear season 4, 10 episodes. Andor season 2, 12 episodes. Severance season 2, also 10 episodes. That stuff's kind of fine, I guess, because the trade-off is supposed to be, in theory, well, it used to be, you would get fewer episodes, but each episode was a little longer and it would drop all at once. Whereas this was designed to be released weekly. This show would air from September and would go until about April or May-ish. So it makes more sense for a 22 episode format rather than 10 episodes 1 hour, which you can just binge through. So another massive difference in the model between the 2005 television model and the streaming model is the fucking part 1 and part 2 bullshit. Bridgerton, Stranger Things, The Witcher, you're on my list, okay? The really thing that irritates me now when streaming platforms split their seasons is A, not even the last season, B, one season is usually only about 8 to 10 episodes, so when you're splitting it in half, you only get 4 or 5. What the hell is that? What are we doing? What are we doing? What is actually happening? The concept of splitting a season in half isn't new by any stretch, okay? Mad Men's last season did it. Breaking Bad's last season did it. Sex and the City's last season did it. Pretty Little Lies did it. Shout out to Max Mac. I love your Pretty Little Lies videos. My partner and I watched the show, had a great time. It was delightful. The Sopranos also split its last season in half. But the difference between those shows, twofold. Number 1, it was the final season. Number 2, there was still a highly substantial amount of episodes. Breaking Bad's last season batch of episodes was still about 16. Sex and the City, about 22. The Sopranos, about 21. So it makes more sense that if you want to extend your victory lap or whimper to the finish line, if you're Pretty Little Liars, that you split it up, but you still give a lot of episodes so people can enjoy the last hurrah, right? None of this stupid 8 episodes split in half 4 nonsense, because if you really want people to engage with your show for a long time, you would just put more episodes in. This show did it for a really long time to pretty good success, I have to say. When we get to the last season, don't worry, I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna get into it. Don't worry. So I need to know what's going on in these writers' rooms. Well, actually, we had the strikes, so we know it's a bit chaotic in there, because some of the business practices and creative practices seem odd to me. Part of also why I wanted to make this video was to go into the difference in the TV landscape. It also probably explains why I'm seeing so many younger Gen Z. Also, if you're Australian or English and you say Z instead of Z, you're on my personal list. It also probably explains why I'm seeing a lot of younger people going back to watch these shows, because they've probably only known the streaming model, which means they've probably only known very short seasons that are split in half, that are delayed or cancelled, or just, maybe not as consistent. I personally, and this might vary depending on what your For You page is like, but I've seen lots of videos of younger Gen Z kind of lamenting the fact that shows like this don't really exist anymore, or at least there aren't new shows like this, right? These were shows like Supernatural, Grey's Anatomy, House, that aired 22 episodes every year on time. So, because these shows were 22 episodes per season, about 60 minutes, 18 minutes of ads annually, that meant the filming schedule was pretty grueling, to say the least, as well as the press schedule. We're talking pretty consistently 18, 19, 20-hour days, and you're often getting the script for the next episode while you're working on the current one. Katherine Heigl, who was on Grey's Anatomy, spoke a lot about this during her time on there and rightly called out how it was really unsafe and unsustainable. This is also where Smallville comes back into play. Tom Welling has a story, he played Clark Kent on Smallville, that he spoke about on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast. Michael Rosenbaum played Lex Luthor in Smallville. On the podcast, he spoke about how his filming days were really, really long and he was driving himself to and from set. He's driving from Vancouver to somewhere else in America where he is living. And it got to the point of his exhaustion where he pulled over to the side of the road, fell asleep in his car, woke up, turned back, and went back to filming. Crazy behavior. So eventually the Smallville cast got together, went to the executives and said, hey, this guy's your lead. If you don't put your heads in, he's going to have a car accident, die, which is A, horrible. B, the whole project is in jeopardy then because he's the lead, right? The show revolves around his character. It is a huge liability in every capacity to be conducting business this way. Jensen and Jared used that story when they started filming Supernatural to get drivers to and from set. So while there are good parts of this kind of television format, there are definitely problems with just how rigorous the filming schedule was, and perhaps that is one of the benefits of streaming, in that because you are filming for a shorter period of time, hopefully you have a bit more flexibility with how all of the logistics can work, would be my guess. But also the writer's strike and the actor strike still happened largely because of the streaming model regarding pay, so maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. Furthermore, because the schedule of this was so intense, it meant that actors in the TV space didn't get as much of an opportunity to work in film, which is how we still, at this time, had a really clear divide between a TV actor and a film actor. There are obviously a couple of exceptions, like Jennifer Aniston of Friends, Michelle Williams from Dawson's Creek. She transitioned to film and is back into TV from what I understand, but those were the exceptions. It wasn't very common. And Nicole Kidman talked about in one of her variety Actors on Actors with Ewan McGregor how being a TV actor was apparently considered a last-ditch effort. It wasn't considered very actorly, or not a real actor if you were in TV, because you were in people's homes and you had that more intimate accessibility, when that wasn't the point of being an actor. Films, theatre, keeping the audience at distance, this was low class, intimate, and whatever, just sure. Whereas now, that's obviously changing quite a bit. Now, I think because of the streaming model and because you also don't have to sign up for a 6-year contract like you did here, you have a bit more flexibility in the projects that you work on. You don't have to do 6 seasons of a show or 3 dedicated seasons. You can only do the one if you like. So that's another good thing with the streaming model, in that it has in some ways a bit more opportunity to play around with the format that you like as an actor and as a writer as well. But there are a lot of problems, definitely. And I think as people are going back to shows like these, the problems with those streaming models are a bit more apparent. Another big thing that shows from this time period have going for them, Supernatural included, is that if the show wasn't a hit straight away, it didn't immediately get cancelled. Now, there were definitely some shows around this time that premiered that only got 13 episodes and then were cancelled. I'm not saying that just because your show premiered in this time, you were a safe bet, but it's being discussed in a lot of these online spaces that shows actually have time to grow. Because you have 22 episodes to work with, you have actually more room to find your feet and try new things and, fuck around a bit. The streaming model, not really. And Netflix is pretty unceremonious with cancelling really popular shows. My beloveds. So, that's part 2 of this video essay. Done. We've talked about how SuperWhoLock helped keep the show alive for as long as it did. Now we've talked about what the TV landscape was like at the time when Supernatural premiered, and I guess more broadly speaking, how it probably wouldn't premiere in this way now, with television being what it is. Okay, so without further ado, have a quick hydration break, go get a snack, put your washing out. I know you have to take your washing out, take your meds, and then we'll come back and get into the pilot of Supernatural. Welcome back. I hope you're hydrated. I hope you've peed, had a snack, or have a snack. Hope you're taking your meds. And now, let's get into it. Supernatural Season 1, Episode 1, aptly named Pilot, premiered on the 13th of September 2005, which was 20 years ago. I know. I was a child when the show premiered. A child!
A child.
It premiered on WB-TV. This was Warner Brothers television station, which then later merged with UPN and CW, but it doesn't matter, it's not important. Anyway, the show later aired on what is now known as the CW. Anyway, so, all that aside, it premiered on that network. Episode 1 was aptly named Pilot. Most network television shows, in fact I think all network television shows, the first episode was called Pilot. You've probably heard of pilot season in Los Angeles, which is the ripe time for actors to be finding work because new shows are looking to be greenlit, therefore they are all usually called pilot. I believe this trend is still happening, but there are probably shows where this isn't the case for a new show to not be called, for a new show's first episode not to be called pilot. I'll also in the show notes put the writer and director of the episode because, it's just a nice little tidbit and it's good to credit creators for their work. It's important. Make sure to like and subscribe. The episode opens in Lawrence, Kansas, 22 years ago. That's what comes up on screen. We have a family with 2 young boys getting ready for bed. We hear the older brother say, "Good night, Sam," and kiss him on the forehead. Baby Dean, baby Sam. It's very cute. Very brotherly. Dad arrives and says, "Hey Dean," telling the audience, me, that the older brother's name is Dean. So, 2 brothers. Baby Dean, baby Sam. Older, younger. Now, I also want to tell you that I have an English degree, so I will be using my literary analysis skills as much as possible for your benefit. Truly, I promise it's for your benefit. I want you to take note of the way Dean kisses Sam on the forehead. It's very intimate. The camera zooms in on it. Not in like a yucky, It's very brotherly. It's very affectionate. Dean is instantly framed as the caretaker in this relationship. He's there to look after Sam. The first words of the episode of the show are "Good night, Sam." He's instantly framed as the big brother, the caretaker, the one who looks after Sam. Furthermore, the lighting in this scene is very cozy. It's very warm, very homely. It makes us feel safe here. Makes us feel like we belong, which is a really strong comparison to the rest of the location. Outside, as the episode opened, we can see how dark it is. There are no street lights, no moonlight. This space feels like a bit of a haven, the only warm place in the world, or this world at least. Because you have this warm, small, intimate space contrasted with this dark, vast, terrifying kind of void, I guess for lack of a better word, it feels like that darkness is encroaching in on this space, like the family's on borrowed time, or that something is about to go very, very, very wrong. What that means though is because the darkness is encroaching, it pushed the family together. As we see Dean leap into Dad's arms here. Mum asks, "You got him?" And Dad says, "Yeah, I got you."
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
I want to spend time with the pilot because it sets the tone for the rest of the show in every way. Narratively, thematically, aesthetically, also managing audiences' expectations because the first 5 minutes of this show are insane. It's also why pilot season is such a big deal in the landscape, I think still to this day, but especially at this time, because you had to get your pilot right. You could have a kind of middling first season, but as long as your pilot was pretty excellent, you would be okay-ish, or you're at least more stable than perhaps a weaker pilot. But I promise the other episodes will race through because not all of them need this much analysis, and that's also part of the format of a 22 episode structure. So Sam goes to sleep, Dean goes to bed, Mum and Dad go to bed, and then we cut to later at night. Mum gets up at some point in the night to go check on Sam. I know I've written it down here, but that's just for my own personal notes. But we don't know the mum's name. If you watch with subtitles, it'll tell you, but within dialogue exchanges, we don't know either mum's name or dad's name. We learn it a little bit later. Anyway, mum gets up to go check on Sam and she sees dad standing over him. She asks, John, is he okay? Dad's name is John. John says, shh, indicating Sam to sleep, doesn't want him to get woken up. Mum says, okay, and then she turns around to go back to bed. But then something weird happens. Mum notices the light flickering at the end of the hallway. This on its own seems fine, but then the music changes. It becomes really eerie. It becomes quite suspenseful. Mum isn't easily spooked because then she goes to the light to see what's going on. Maybe there's a loose fuse or whatever. I don't know. If something's wrong with the light. Mum taps the light, doesn't necessarily dismiss it, but she doesn't seem that perturbed by it. She kind of goes, okay. Then she hears a noise coming from downstairs. Again, the music is mysterious, suspenseful. We can feel that something is about to happen, but what? What could it possibly be? This is a safe home, right? It was so warm and fuzzy and cozy earlier. Everyone said they loved each other. Everything's gonna be fine, right? Right? So, Mum goes downstairs to follow the noise and she can see the television on. And in front of the television, she can see that John has fallen asleep. But if John's asleep at the TV, then who's upstairs with Sam? This is when shit hits the fan. The music splits. We get these really strong strings that stop Mum in her tracks, right? And the music mirrors her. She sprints up the stairs, right? We follow her first person camera point of view, so we can see her moving through the stairs really quickly. Mum bursts into the room, then she screams, which wakes up John downstairs, who then starts to run upstairs, following Mary in her exact footsteps. Also, yeah, this is where we learned that her name's Mary, because John calls out for her. He says, Mary, Mary, runs up after her. John gets upstairs, goes to Sam's room, and everything is fine? Mary's nowhere to be seen. Sam looks okay. So, we're okay? Everything's fine? John then goes over to Sam's crib. Sam seems fine. He's kind of wriggling. He seems happy. A moment of respite. Then something happens. A spot appears next to Sam's pillow. Then another. Then another. We have an idea of what it could be, but we don't know exactly what that is. But if it's falling onto Sam's pillow, then we know where it's coming from. John turns around, looks up. The camera stays on him as we watch him gasp at what is on the ceiling. Mary is stuck to the ceiling, her belly split in half, still breathing as she lights on fire. John collapses as Mary alights, flames engulfing Sam's bedroom, because remember, Mary is bleeding into Sam's crib and all hell breaks loose. Everything goes wrong. Before I said shit hits the fan, now shit really hits the fan. At this point, John grabs Sam from his crib and starts bolting. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, but great, we know where Mary is, we know where John is, we know where Sam is. Where's Dean? Aren't there two brothers in this story? You would be correct. Throughout all of this happening, and this, no one is checking on Dean, okay? No one is looking out for him. No one's asking where Dean is. This will be a theme that comes up consistently throughout the show, that no one is checking on Dean, okay? So, despite no one checking up on Dean, Dean wakes himself up and sees his brother's room on fire, his mum nowhere to be seen, and his dad sprinting towards him, holding his baby brother. Then, we get this clip.
Take your brother outside as fast as you can. Don't look back. Now, Dean, go!
This defines everything about these brothers and their relationship with each other and their relationship with their dad. Okay, more specifically with John. John, I'm going to get into it in these videos because, oh boy, that man on site. Throughout this whole exchange, the room being on fire, mum dead, because of course you're dead after that. No one is asking about Dean. No one's checking on his welfare, making sure he's okay. The number one priority is to make sure that baby Sam is okay. All right? That's the priority. Baby Sam. So because that's the main priority, that's Dean's drive throughout the show is to look after Sam, which he will do to varying degrees of success. He has some weird interpretations of that as the show goes on, especially in season 9. Season 9, when I catch you, season 9, when I catch you, boy, when I catch you, it's not going to be good. Not going to be good for you, season 9.
When I catch you, Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky.
So, Dean grabs Sam. He runs out of the house and he turns around just in time to see Sammy's bedroom blow up. Another big of fire, and that's it. Dean grabs Sam, starts running out as John turns back around and goes back towards where Mary is. He goes back to the burning room. And I understand why he did this, and I'm so sorry, sir, but that's super dead. Like, you can't get more dead than that. You should probably turn around and follow your sons who are alive and who need you and who need their support. But that's just me, you know, I'm not a parent. What do I know? Baby Dean grabs baby Sam, runs out of the house and says, "It's okay, Sammy." Baby Dean turns around and sees Sammy's bedroom blow up one more time and he's kind of transfixed. He's not really sure what to do. At that point, John runs out, scoops up Dean holding Sam and says, "I got you." They bolt away from the house and emergency services start to turn up. And of course they do. How could you not? It's kind of crazy. The sequence ends with John, Sam and Dean sitting next to emergency staff. John's face, one of grief and fury. Whew, what an opener. I can't think of many shows that have an opening sequence that strong, especially, and this is crazy to me, that whole sequence, mum on fire, establishing the brothers, mum dying, dad like framing himself as what he is, that happens in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, that whole thing takes place. Crazy, 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 crazy. If that were now, that whole thing, that whole interaction, 1 episode. That would be 1 episode. We would see the whole nighttime routine. We would see mum cooking, we'd see dad getting home from work, we would see the brothers playing, we would see her putting them to bed, and then that would all happen, right? We would spend more time with them, and then they would take her away. I think this is more effective. I think there's something extremely effective about a tight-knit opening sequence like this. Crazy behavior. Crazy behavior. The madman pulled it off. We still have another 38 minutes and 43 seconds to go. And in that time, the relationship's established, the tone, motivation, the world setting. We know that this is a world where monsters, quote unquote, or, you know, not natural entities exist. And then the show goes, okay, what are you gonna do about it? Huh? What's gonna happen next? Well, luckily the show tells us. So, the screen goes black, and then it comes up saying 22 years later. We then arrive in Stanford University. How exciting. Very cool. I'm sure that's a great place. We hear a woman calling out for Sam. The parallels are paralleling, and they will continue to parallel. However, it seems like a very different kind of situation. We learn that the person calling out for Sam is his girlfriend, Jess. The show also doesn't say her name until a bit later, but I'm not doing that whole rigmarole again, okay? Sam's girlfriend, Jess, is calling out to him because they're going to a Halloween party. We see that Jess is dressed as a naughty nurse because the show's from 2005, and she's trying to convince Sam to go to this party. She's cajoling him, like, come on, let's go. Where's your costume? What's happening? Sam says, you know how I feel about Halloween. Also, let the record show that Sam is a cutie. We go to a bar and learn that Sam has taken the LSATs, presumably to go to Stanford Law, because of course. We also learn, and this is a production sidebar, actually before I forget, Jared Padalecki is billed higher than Jensen Ackles for the entirety of the show. The whole time, even when the story diverts from Sam a little bit, Jared still gets top billing. Eric Kripke has said he didn't plan the show to go for very long beyond season 5. Actually, he was meant to only end at season 5. And it does make sense at the start of the show, particularly the first 2 seasons. Sam is our focal point, right? It was his room that burned down when he was a baby. He's the one we meet back at the pilot. He's the one who somehow ended up in California which from what I understand is not very close to Kansas. It's about 4 states over. And if I know anything about the United States, and I assure you, most of what I know about the United States has been against my will, is that it's a huge country. So sure, 4 states over might not seem that that much of a big difference, but that landmass, pretty huge, pretty big difference. Now, people move around all the time for work or personal, like relationships or whatever, but the comment about him hating Halloween, everything we saw that happened to him when he was a baby, something has definitely happened for him to be in California, okay? Other than what happened to him as a baby. There's a reason he's out here, okay? We also learned that he got a 174 on his LSAT test result, which, great. I don't know.
179!
Also, Elle went to Harvard, which from what I understand is a better school than Stanford. Oh my God, I just realized they would have been studying around the same time-ish. Could you imagine going into court and seeing one of the lawyers is Elle Woods and the other one is Sam Winchester? Crazy behavior. Who has a better hair care routine, Sam or Elle? Sound off. Anyway, our suspicions, or maybe concerns, or questions, however you want to frame it, about Sam's circumstance are confirmed when he tells his friends and Jess that he hasn't told his family about his LSAT score. He also has a scholarship interview on Monday for Stanford pre-law, which he also hasn't told them about. His friend asks, "Why haven't you told your family about this?" Sam says, "We're not exactly the Bradys." Sam's friend says, "Well, I'm not exactly the Huxtables." You might be thinking, I don't get what's bad about that reference. It's a family, whatever. The Huxtables is the family in the Cosby Show.
Oh no!
Just a reminder that this show's from 2005. So again, show's 2005, naughty nurse, Cosby reference. Yeah, okay, sure. But to her credit, Jess is boosting Sam up. She's saying, wow, you're so smart, you're gonna crush the interview, you're gonna be great, everything's gonna be wonderful. I really like Jess. I think she's great. I hope nothing happens to her. Sam says, what would I do without you? Jess replies, crash and burn. Ma'am, do you know what show you're in? I need to save her. Anyway, we go back to their apartment after the party. Sam and Jess are asleep. Sam is awoken by a noise coming from inside the apartment. He gets up and starts to poke around. Now we've just learned that Sam is a nerd. Very bookish, got a good LSAT score. Well, for a man.
A man.
So imagine my surprise, and probably the surprise of the viewers, when it turns out that Sam is really good in a fight. Not only is he good at fighting, but he can fight really well in the dark. Like, okay, get it, Sam. So, Sam's fighting someone. We don't know who it is. Who could it be? What's going on? Sam's flipped over by the assailant. Who could it be? Meet Dean Winchester. God, he's so pretty. I want this on the record now. And let's get it out of the way now. I love Dean so much. However, Dean is supposed to be this, like, macho man, right?
Run, I want to go to war! I want a lightsaber!
He likes cars, and he likes leather jackets, and he likes guns, and he likes one-night stands. So that means he has lines of dialogue that we as feminists simply have to ignore. Okay? We just have to move past it. We can't listen to it. There's a really bad joke in season 4 that will really, really articulate what I'm talking about. Also, when he meets Jess, he's kind of a bit unpleasant towards her. She says, because she's just in a, sleeping top and undies because it's her house and she shouldn't have to worry about that stuff. She says, oh, I'm going to go put something on. And Dean says, no, I wouldn't dream of it. Oh, terrible! Sam asks Dean, hey, brother, literally, what the fuck are you doing here, breaking into my apartment? Dean says, oh, I can't find Dad. Sam responds to this one of the ways of all time. He just says, he's out, he'll stumble back home later, what are you worried about? Now, if my dad was missing, and my brother went to strong measures to tell me that he was missing, I'm not sure I'd respond that way. So this, again, tells us that not all is well with the Winchesters, even all this considered, right? Of course, this will make a mark on a family, but the comment about Halloween, him not talking to his family, him not caring that his dad's missing, things don't seem to be great between them. Despite all of that, because of how he was framed at the start, remember, Dean, the caretaker, kind of the glue, Dean says this.
Dad's on a hunting trip, and he hasn't been home in a few days.
Sam's face is like, oh, okay, we're not playing around. So he pretty quickly decides to go with Dean, or at least hear more of what Dean has to say. And it's through these discussions that we get more of an insight as to why Sam doesn't really speak to his family anymore. They're arguing about the way that their dad raised them, which was constantly tracking and obsessively tracking whatever killed their mum. At one point in his life, Sam told his dad he was afraid of the dark, and his dad gave him a 45. And Dean says, yeah, okay. Sam says, I was 9. Which, like, understandable, but menace behavior on John's part. Absolutely menace behavior. But again, that emotional support, that nurturing kind of care that he should have been provided, he said, oh yeah, like my 4-year-old can do that. Bet, no problem. He can be his second parent. Sure, I don't have to do it. I'm a man. As Sam and Dean are having this exchange about the way they were raised, we get this very important exchange.
I can't do this alone.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to.
That will come up later in the show. Sam relents, and it's unclear what the reason is, but I think it is a part of him that wants to be with his brother again. He wants to see him and wants to be with him. Dean shows Sam, and us by extension, what he's found. We learn that Dad, John, I'm just going to say John now, Dad, just whatever. John was investigating a mysterious disappearance out in Centennial Highway. He called Dean, left a voicemail, and said, this is bigger than all of us, call me when you can. So, through the supernatural tools that they have, Dean reversed the voicemail, and an eerie, ethereal voice can be heard saying, I can never go home. I can never go home. I can never go home. Me at the end of a party. We also then, after Dean has explained all about what their dad was up to, the fact that he can hunt alone, what he was tracking, we get this exchange.
You know, in almost 2 years, I've never bothered you, never asked you for a thing.
2 years of no Christmases, no birthdays, nothing. Absolutely nothing. But in Dean saying, I've never bothered you, we also learn that Sam probably hasn't reached out either. So in 2 years, they haven't spoken, which is a very big difference from what happened at the start, where Dean was literally carrying Sam out of their house, sprinting away. He was putting his own feelings aside to look after Sam, and now they haven't spoken in 2 years. Concern. After more arguing about their future, in which Dean thinks that Sam should come back to being a hunter, Sam doesn't want to, they agree to go together to find Dad, on the proviso that Sam is back in time for his Stanford interview on Monday. It's really important to him that he gets this interview because it's a full scholarship ride. Huge, huge deal. Dean doesn't really seem to get that, but it seems that if this means he gets to spend time with Sam and help find Dad, he's willing to do it. This specific exchange will come up a lot throughout the season. The fact that Sam decided to go with Dean at Dean's request. Not to get too spoilery, but this exchange and the decision for Sam to leave his life is something that will come up with Dean's sense of self and how he views himself throughout the show. It'll come up. So just keep a pin in that. Again, we're gonna have a quick hydration break, go to the bathroom, go get a snack, everything's gonna be okay. We'll still be here when you get back. Okay, go. Amazing, you're back, hooray. Now, onto the hot ghost.
What?
After this, we cut to Centennial Highway, where this man, Troy, is on the phone to his girlfriend while driving, which was his first mistake. Don't use your phone while driving. But then he hangs up when he sees this woman. Sorry, my whiteboard is on a table, and I have to lean over to get to it. I could go all the way around, but I'm not going to because I probably won't. Anyway, so Troy is on the phone with his girlfriend, hangs up when he sees that woman in the corner over there, sort of dancing along the side of the highway. It's odd behavior, I have to say. It's a bit weird. Anyway, he pulls over and asks if the woman would like to get in the car, which she does. She then starts being really like seductive, and she asks, do you want to come home with me? And him, despite having a girlfriend, says, hell yeah. He drives her home, but she doesn't immediately get out of the car. She sits in the back seat and just says, I can never go home. Troy looks at the house and says, okay, well, what's going on? This is kind of odd and a little weird, and I'm literally in a horror TV show, so like, this doesn't seem like a good idea. And he is right. He turns around to talk to her, but she's not there anymore. But we also didn't hear the car doors open and close. Troy goes up to the house, sees her in her horror state like this, is fucking spooked, gets in the car and books it. So, you know, smarty pants, good for him, I guess. But as he's driving away, trying to get back to his girlfriend, I presume, the woman appears in the back seat because that's something that she can do, I guess. Troy gets spooked, crashes the car onto the bridge on Centennial Highway, and the camera pulls out and zooms back in the outside of the car as we hear him screaming, tussling, and blood splattering on the window. Honestly, hot ghost seduces a killer and kills him. So, no notes. We cut back to Sam and Dean, and we learn that Dean pays for his lifestyle hunting, and other hunters, I presume, do this, pays for what he needs through credit card scams, which I guess makes sense, because how would you charge for this kind of work? Like, you have to tell people then that like ghosts and vampires or whatever are real, and then you have to be like, by the way, money? Is it what, like one fucking invoice per ghost? No, like, too weird. So steals cards and shit to pay for what he needs. Take with that what you will. We are also about to get one of the most iconic exchanges between the brothers on this show. If you've been on Tumblr or any part of the internet and you haven't seen the show, I guarantee you've seen this one. Play the clip.
House rules, Sammy. Driver picks the music. Shotgun shuts his cake hole.
Also, just a quick side note, we have baby Dean, baby Sam. Not to be confused with Sam, baby, and Dean, baby. That distinction is important, just to be clear. That interaction brings us to another really important component of the show, which is the music. The music is such a huge part of the show's language and identity, and how it was angling itself to a largely male demographic. You have dad rock, cool cars, leather jackets, cool monsters, dead women. Everything about this show is angling itself so heavily towards a male demographic. More specifically, probably male demographic in their late 20s, early 30s. Now, I've not read anything to confirm that, like I've not read a report that said, oh, we were getting this demographic, but given the everything, and especially the age of the actors, that's probably where they're going for. I'll repeat, this show was marketed towards men in their late 20s and early 30s. Also, quick side note, look at how hard these chocolate fucks are serving. Sir, this is a crime scene, not the runway, especially this. What is this, huh? Sam and Dean arrive at the crime scene of where Troy died and tell the officers there that they are federal marshals. Mary, in what world? The other cops even note how young they are, which Dean kind of brushes past and just keeps going with his line of questioning. As the brothers are asking the police questions, we learn that there's almost nearly nothing in common with the other people who have died or gone missing on this bridge. The only connection between them is that they're all men. Dean then firmly cements himself as a cab.
Well, that is exactly the kind of crack police work I'd expect out of you guys.
This scene and later in the episode highlights the amazing chemistry between Jared and Jensen in their brotherly relationship. The stamping on the foot, the bickering. Sam shoves Dean at one point away on a wheelie chair, and then Dean shoves him back. They're just little interactions like that that really build the believability that they are brothers. And I can tell that Eric Kripke has a brother, or at least a sibling, because anyone else without siblings who write siblings should not. I'd never call my brother bro. Unless I'm being ironic or stupid, but not seriously. I think I take psychic damage every time I read that in a book or hear in a movie. When a sibling's like, hey sis, or hey bro. I call mine butthead. We're in our 20s, what do you want from me? So now we officially learn with Sam and Dean that this guy's name was Troy because his girlfriend is putting missing posters up of him around town. The reason that they think it's a missing persons case rather than a murder is Troy's body isn't there. It's gone. Vanished. Spooky. We can probably work out that he's been killed because of what we saw, but the other people in the show didn't see that. They just think he's, gone for a little walk. But no, he's dead. We also learn that there is a local legend surrounding the ghost who we think killed/took Troy. The story goes that a woman was murdered out on the highway, and whoever picks her up, thinking she's a hitchhiker, is never heard from again. We later learn that the ghost is likely a woman named Constance Welch, and she died on the bridge in 1981. We also learn that prior to her death, her children died. We also learn that ghosts are usually born okay, so English major, look at you go. That ghosts are usually born from violent deaths or strange deaths, or maybe in a capacity where death was not supposed to happen. Now, we also learn that Constance wasn't murdered, but the circumstances surrounding her death, as well as her children's, still aren't very good. Well, her children were killed, but Constance killed something else.
The word I'm searching for, I can't say, because there's preschool toys present.
And we also learned that Constance wasn't murdered, but she murdered her children. I'm so getting demonetized for this video, but okay, sure, I understand. So Constance murdered her children, and after murdering her children, she jumped off the bridge. This is pretty consistent with our general understanding of ghosts. They experience a violent or difficult death, and because they have a difficult time accepting that death, it tethers the spirit here and makes it impossible to move on. Now, this seems to be the case with Constance, that she can't move on from whatever happened, but we don't know exactly what the tether is just yet. Later that night, Sam and Dean go to the bridge to check it out. It seems that the dad would be here because he was chasing Constance, but they don't know where exactly he is now. So, Dean wants to keep looking for Dad, but Sam reminds him he has to get back for the interview on Monday. This leads to an argument. They start arguing about their respective futures and what they want. Dean straight up asks Sam if Jess knows about everything that Sam's ever done, and Sam says no, and she never will. They keep arguing and things escalate when Sam brings up Mary. Now, Sam, as we recall, was only a baby when Mary died, so he doesn't know really anything about her. He says, if it weren't for photos, I wouldn't know what Mum looks like because Dad never talks about her. However, despite not talking about her, John has been obsessed with finding whatever did this to her, whatever killed her, but he still won't talk about her personality, what she was like, how much he loved her. He's only focused on this. The last part of the argument between the brothers really lands the gut punch, because Sam says, even if we find what killed Mum, she's still gone and she's not coming back. Now, based off Dean's reaction, Sam said the quiet part out loud, because based off Dean's reaction, he either hasn't thought about it or tries not to think about it, because then he shoves Sam against the wall. He's had enough of his shit and looks like he's gonna punch him because he just says, don't talk about her like that. Sam, to his credit, I don't know. Sam doesn't back down, really. He just kind of stares at Dean and braces for what's about to happen. But Dean kind of shoves himself off Sam and walks away. The older brother instinct kicks in. The caretaker, so he leaves it. This will come up a lot. Dean putting his own feelings aside for Sam's benefit. So, while they're still kind of reeling from that argument, Constance shows up and hijacks Dean's car. We know she's hijacked it because Dean holds up the keys. So there's no way that she should be, under normal circumstances, driving the car. So, Constance starts the car, beelines for the brothers, nearly kills them, but they survive. Dean jumps over into the water and covers himself in sewage, because that's what the water under the bridge is for. So, the brothers drive to a motel, get there in the morning, and they learn that their dad has actually booked a room there. So, after finding out the room that he's in, they pick a lock and they break in. Now, specifically, it's Sam who picks the lock, and this is an interesting detail that I hadn't really considered until the deep dive into this pilot. What I found interesting watching the pilot is how easily Sam falls back into the hunter habits that he's trying so hard to leave behind. How quickly he turns into fight mode when Dean breaks in. How he goes along with Dean's lie about being police officers. How easily it comes to him to pick a lock. How he kept up with Dean when Dean was telling him about the investigation their dad had been conducting into finding Constance. He fell back into that routine very easily. I think this is part of Sam's internal struggle. He hates how naturally and easily he can fall back into those habits, and he hates how easy it is for that to be. He has to work really, really, really hard to distance himself from that lifestyle. For Dean's part, Dean there thinking, well, you're really good at this. We work really well as a team. You fall back into it so easily. I can tell your heart is in this from Dean's perspective. So why are you walking away? Why do you not want to be with me and Dad? That's what really is going on here. The conflict is conflicting. They get into John's room and quickly discern he's not been there for a while. There's food everywhere, there's rubbish everywhere, the room is what? It's just not good. But this scene and the next few are really important to building the monster lore of this show. There's a salt line next to the door, next to the window. There are cat's eye shells scattered around the floor in some kind of ritual component, and there are writings marking the wall with all different monster history, ways to kill them, ways to identify them, right? This is a crazy person's den. Not unlike this, actually. Not unlike this. John and I have one thing in common. Boards. Bitches love boards. Because I don't think he loves those boys, and I love those boys. So, get hecked. John, thank you so much. Also on the wall are all the different victims of what we think is Constance, right? But we don't yet know what the connection between them is because they're all different backgrounds, different jobs, different family setups. Nothing initially seems to be tying them together. Sam stumbles on to a piece of monster lore pertaining to a woman in white. Monster time! Now, there are lots of different iterations of woman in white, but the basics that you need to remember is she's usually in a white dress or similar garment. She sticks to rural areas and is often associated with local legends about tragedy. Other important components to remember about the woman in white legend, which again varies from place to place. She is often associated with an accidental or impending death, murder, or suicide. The death of children are usually involved as well, and there are some motifs to death involving water or drowning or something along those lines. What the show appears to be running with is the Hispanic American folklore figure La Llorona. From what I have understood in my research, this figure first appeared in Mexico City in about 1550 and ticks all the boxes that the show's running with. Cheating husband, dead children, bodies of water. Okay, school's out, you can put your notebooks down if you had them to begin with. So, even if you don't really know the legend of the woman in white, you don't have to, because Sam and Dean obviously know, because then John has worked out that because she's a woman in white, what must be linking the victims is the fact they have all cheated on their partners. So really, Constance is doing us a favor, you know, she's just snuffing out the baddies. Like, good for you, girl, I don't want to get involved. Sam and Dean learn that Constance's husband is actually still alive, so given what the circumstances could be for how she died, they decide to go talk to him. The brothers then make up after their fight on the bridge, which leads us to another iconic exchange.
Jerk. Bitch.
If this was any other network, or maybe I'm thinking this because I'm Australian and I talk to my siblings very differently, this exchange would be far more crass than just jerk and bitch, you know? So, because he's covered in literal shit, Dean showers, then decides to go and get food. Sam stays in, which is good because the second Dean gets outside, he's spotted by cops, who obviously don't buy that he's a federal marshal. As the cops are walking over to talk to him, Dean calls Sam and tells him 5-0 take off, which Sam immediately starts putting in practice. This is another example of what I mean about Sam immediately falling back into those hunter habits. He knows the code and he knows to start getting his shit together to get out of there. To buy Sam some time to get out, because Sam is right there, we have this exchange with Dean and the officers.
My boobs.
Feral. Dean's arrested, and during his interrogation, we learn that the cops have his father's journal. This journal is everything. It has all the monster lore, hunting tips, and it also tracks John's movements. We also know that this journal is important because Dean's expression changes straight away. He's kind of jokey, a bit cocky beforehand. The second the journal comes on the table, serious. This is important. Dean has to get this journal no matter what, because if he gets the journal, they could find out A, how to get rid of Constance, B, where's Dad. While Dean's being questioned, Sam goes to speak with Constance's husband, Joseph. We learn, Joe was a little naughty during his marriage with Constance, so we can confirm that she was a woman in white. She ticks all the boxes. We also did learn that she drowned her children, which didn't sit well with her. So then she took a different course of action. Specifically regarding the children, we learned that they died in their family home, which is probably why Constance is always saying, I can never go home. Now that we know what Constance is, we sort of know how to kill her. It's time to put a plan into action, assuming that these boys have a plan. They never have a plan. Sam fakes a 911 call to get Dean out of jail. Dean gets out, calls Sam, and tells him that Dad has left Jericho, which he learned because he managed to get John's journal. While on the phone with Dean, Constance turns up in the back of Sam's car, well, Dean's car, but Sam's driving it, and starts pulling her ruse on him. She starts the whole take me home thing. Sam's like, nah, bitch. Constance goes, okay, whatever. I was actually just being polite, but fuck you. And then she directs the car to her house. This next bit gets a bit, how do I say, icky? Constance starts pulling the moves on Sam, both like in a sexy way and then like a violent way.
This better be violent, sexy, or both.
Sam says, you can't kill me, I'm not unfaithful. Constance then says, you're about to be. So Sam's trying to fight her off, but she's really strong. She's a ghost. Ghosts get supernatural power because they're fueled by whatever is keeping them here. So they're pure emotion, which is how we get this shot of her. Because as she's trying to fight Sam, she pulls her ghostly visage off, and then she looks pretty terrifying. Dean turns up, shoots her, which buys Sam enough time to drive the car into the house. But she can't go home. Sam's like, you're going home, bitch. I'm taking you home. Get me the heck out of here. Thank you so much. Constance gets into the house. The brothers are in the house, and she shoves the piano up against them, locking them in place. And it looks like she's about to kill them. But then we see water starting to trickle down the stairs of the house. Constance turns around and sees these two small shadows standing at the top of the staircase. They then approach next to her and take hold of her. And in that moment of realizing what she's done, Constance is dragged down with the children. She finally faces her guilt head on, and feeling some kind of peace or inability to stay on this earth, she dies. She's gone. Hooray! They did it. The brothers then work out that bringing her back inside is what they needed to do to get her to move on in whatever capacity that is, so they can go on with their lives. But nothing bad happens after this. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. It's actually, the season's actually just this episode. That's all. Nothing else happens. So Dean drops Sam back to Stanford, tries one more time to get him to come with him. He says, we're a good team, you were great out there. Sam says, I'll see you later. Dean drives off. The last 2 minutes of this episode, insane. In the same way the first 5 minutes of this episode were insane, the last 2 are pretty insane. Sam gets inside. He's pretty exhausted, but he's got enough time to sleep before his interview on Monday for Stanford. How fantastic. And he sees wonderful Jess has made these beautiful cookies for him. How thoughtful of her. How nice. So Sam takes a cookie, lies down on his bed, and starts to go to sleep. Then we get drop, drop, drop. Sam wakes up, looks at the ceiling to see Jessica. She's pinned to the ceiling, her stomach is ripped open, and she lights on fire. Parallels are paralleling, which now means that I can finally rip my girls. Also, quick side note, I find it very funny that of all the photos on this board, the highest quality photos are the ones of 2 women. And I love that for us, you know? So, Jess lights on fire, Sam screams for her because of course he does, because how could this happen again? First his mother, now his girlfriend. Absolutely menace behavior by whatever is doing this. Now, fortunately, Dean somehow had some premonition that something bad was about to happen because he bursts in the room, grabs Sam, and starts pulling him out. Sam's fighting him the entire time, screaming for Jess, calling out to her, hoping that maybe he can save her because he was too young to save his mum. Maybe he can save Jess. It is fruitless. Jess is dead. Exactly like at the start, emergency services turn up, start hosing everything down and putting their files together. Sam and Dean are at the Impala, the car. Dean comes up to Sam, his face worried, concerned. How could this be happening again? This is terrifying. Why is it happening? What's going on? What does this have to do with Dad missing? What is this? This is the last shot we get of the episode.
We got work to do.
Guys, we made it!
We did it!
We got through the pilot. How exciting! And we learned about the 2005 TV landscape, SuperWhoLock. We learned so much today. How cool! What an introduction to the show. Really, when you really think about as far as good pilots, this is a pretty good one. It set the tone, everything, set the stakes, got the mystery rolling straight away, told us a lot about who the characters are, and it really built that investment from the get-go. It's hands down one of my favorite pilots. I can watch this pilot all the time and still have a great time. I don't even need sometimes to watch the rest of the season. I'll just watch the pilot. It's that good. Now, some interesting behind the scenes facts, so get your notebooks out because school is back in session. Now, apparently, Bruce Campbell was actually supposed to play the role of John Winchester. Bruce Campbell, you might know likely from the Ash vs. Evil Dead franchise, but notice that's very popular in my house and other Sam Raimi projects. But he obviously was unavailable, so Jeffrey Dean Morgan plays the role of John Winchester instead. Now, to film the on-fire ceiling scenes, that was pretty crazy. First off, real fire was used. I'm not kidding. Real fire was used in these shots. For Mary's scene, she had to be filmed on the floor in that pose with fire about 1.5 meters away from her face. This obviously set off fire alarms and caused an evacuation. Now, to film the scenes of her actually being on fire, for instance, in this moment, what the production team had to do was create a paper mache doll of her that could be lit on fire. I'm not sure if the same thing happened with Jess. I would assume so, but it's not confirmed if that's what happened. So yeah, real fire, paper mache. And that's what's missing from television today. We need to light more people on fire, you know? Speaking of Jess, actually, the producers on the show wanted her to be a long-running, recurring character. They didn't want her killed off straight away, which is kind of cool. However, Eric Kripke said that that wouldn't really fit the format of the show. And I guess that kind of structurally makes sense because if she's in the show, then there would need to be a constant callback to her, which means that Sam would either need to find time to be calling her a lot throughout the show, or they would have to go back to Stanford. Also, this was one of 2 episodes actually shot in the United States. The rest was shot in Vancouver. So that would even be a bigger challenge in having to get back to that same set if that's what they wanted to do. Pilots will sometimes include a feature that's then abandoned later in the series, like in the Gossip Girl pilot. For some reason, Nate Archibald and Chuck Bass are taking the bus to school. Sure, I guess. That doesn't happen in the rest of the season. Eric obviously didn't think that keeping her on in that capacity was going to work. However, he was toying with the idea of a demon Jess. He thought that maybe to have it both these kind of ways, Jess could be a demon, and that's why she would have been killed. This idea is so cool because it actually does come up later in season 5. Again, I won't get into it too much because I want to talk about it at the time, but someone close to Sam being a demon, pretty cool. However, it would have been difficult in the pilot, if she was still dying in the pilot, which seems to be the case, to explain the context and significance of her being a demon manipulating Sam. So due to structural issues and pacing, that idea was abandoned and she died in this manner. That brings us to the end of the fun facts section. As I said at the start of the episode, I have an English degree, so we're going to spend a bit of time going through the themes of this episode and overall show. We have the conflict between family and the self. Sam wants to be his own person. He doesn't want to be a hunter. He wants a safe, normal life with Jess. That obviously contradicts what the family wants. it seems to be interpreted as Sam picking this life means he's ignoring this. He's letting this go. And John cannot understand that. John is obsessed with finding whatever killed his wife and their mother, but Sam is wanting to move on. He wants something else. And I think a lot of people connected to this show because of that storyline, because Sam wanted something different. He didn't want to do what his family was setting out for him. And I think that that's a very universal cause for concern, or at least point of relatability. The next thing to go into is supernatural versus logic. I mean that in the funny sense, because sometimes this show is batshit, but also in the sense of people seeing horrible things happen that they can't explain. Because, and this will come up in episode 4. Episode 4 does it really well. To accept what's happening in front of you, you either have to believe that ghosts, vampires, and other monsters are real, which completely changes the way that you view the world around you, or you tell yourself, I imagined it, I haven't been sleeping very well lately, it didn't happen. You either have to accept one line of thinking at the massive detriment of the other. And the show explores that really, really, really well, I think at least. Another theme that will come up a lot in this show, and I'll expand more on this a bit later, is fridging. Now, I assume most of you watching this know what fridging is. Basically, it is a term used to describe killing off female characters to further the plot of the male characters. Dead, plot, plot, plot. Okay? Dead. It doesn't just happen with Mary and Jess. It comes up a lot with this show's female characters, the frustrating theme of fridging. And I also want to be clear, Supernatural isn't the only offender in this, particularly in 2005. But there are shows now that still fridge its female characters. And I understand why writers do it, but it is frustrating because couldn't it be something like a divorce or non-death related? Why does it have to be death? I guess that's my frustration. And another thing that will come up a lot, particularly in season 1, is revenge. This whole mishap between Sam not talking to his dad and his dad not being a good parent is because they are both in their own way really focused on revenge. Sam can't understand his dad obsessed with killing the monster because it won't bring Mum back. John can't understand why Sam wants to move on because he thinks it will bring him peace and happiness if he kills what killed his wife. Kind of like the plot of Last of Us 2. You want to talk about cycles of revenge and the destruction of revenge and the pointlessness of revenge. You know, just something to keep in mind. You know, we have one person who's hell-bent on revenge and is trying to pursue it no matter the cost, no matter his relationships, no matter his sense of self. And you have someone who goes, nah, I don't think that's for me. I'm sad, obviously, but I don't want that for me anymore. I want something else. I want Jess. Obviously not burning, but alive. And Dean's kind of in the middle, right? He wants to support his dad and wants obviously to avenge his mum, but he also wants his brother there. And I think that's how Dean gets caught in the middle a lot between these two figures in his life. Okay, now school's out. Now school's properly out. That brings us to the end of the video. How exciting! Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun doing this. This was kind of stressful. I'm pretty nervous throughout it. My meds wore off halfway through as well, which is why there are going to be more outtakes for my poor editor to have to go through. I'm very sorry. I got stuttery and it didn't go well. So that's going to be fun to have to work with. Thank you. Anyway, please like, please subscribe, please follow, because I'm going to have more of these videos in the works. The setup will look different. I'm going to get a different board and probably going to look a bit more polished on my end. Perhaps this was all very kind of ad hoc. The post-its will stay. I like the post-its. I like that they're a little bit, you know, whimsical and a bit, you know, messy, for lack of a better word. Be sure to check me out on my socials. You can join me on Twitch where I stream. I'm currently streaming, what's on the rotation? I'm streaming Baldur's Gate 3. I'm streaming Clair Obscure Expedition 33. I'm streaming Stardew Valley. I'm streaming Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remaster. I sometimes stream Assassin's Creed 3, the one set during the American Revolution. I'm also about to add Hollow Knight to the rotation so we can start Silksong, because that's kicking off, which seems very, very fun. So you can join me there. They're a lot more casual over there. I'm much more relaxed. This is, stress. Anyway, thank you for watching. Be sure to check out the next one, and I'll see you there. Bye!